There is a restlessness that lives in some people, a hunger that is never quite satisfied. It is not a hunger for food, or for sleep, or for the simple comforts of home. It is a deeper hunger, a kind of spiritual and emotional starvation that drives them from one moment to the next, from one body to the next, searching for something they cannot name. And if you have ever loved such a person, or been such a person, you know the particular loneliness of that search. You know the feeling of being in a crowded room, or in an intimate embrace, and still feeling utterly, fundamentally alone. We look at a certain kind of behavior, a person who moves from one partner to the next, who seems to collect experiences with the same detachment one might collect souvenirs from a trip, and we are quick to attach a label. We call them a narcissist. We say they are shallow or selfish or incapable of love, and perhaps on the surface that is what it looks like. But if we stop there, if we simply affix the label and turn away, we have missed the entire story. We have missed the human being, and in missing them, we miss something essential about ourselves. Because the truth is, no one is born with that kind of emptiness. A child does not come into the world seeking to use another person's body as a mirror, hoping to catch a glimpse of their own reflection. A child comes into the world wide open, utterly vulnerable, seeking connection. They seek the warm gaze of a mother, the safe arms of a father, the consistent, loving presence that says, "You are here, you are real, you are loved, and you belong." That is the nourishment we all need. It is as essential to the developing psyche as oxygen is to the lungs. So what happens when that nourishment is not there? What happens when the gaze is cold or distracted or demanding? What happens when the arms that should hold you safely instead strike you or turn away or reach for something else? What happens when the message you receive, not in words, but in the very fiber of your being, is that you are not quite right, that your needs are a burden, that to be loved or to survive, you must become what someone else requires you to be? The child adapts. They have no choice. The psyche, in its infinite wisdom and its desperate need to preserve a sense of connection, will do whatever it takes. It will split off the parts of the self that are not acceptable. It will bury the pain, the anger, the very real needs, deep down in the darkness of the unconscious. And it will create a self that can function, a self that can perform, a self that can survive. That is the birth of what we might call the false self. It is a masterpiece of adaptation, a survival mechanism of the highest order. But it is built on a foundation of loss, and that loss, the loss of the authentic self, the loss of the capacity for true connection, is the wound that drives everything that follows. The person who, as an adult, seems to move through intimacy with such careless ease, such detachment, is not free. They are trapped. They are trapped in a prison built long ago, a prison whose walls are made of unmet needs and unbearable pain. So when we ask the question, why would a person sleep with anybody? We are asking the wrong question. The question is not about the behavior. The question is about the wound. The question is, what is the pain that this behavior is trying to soothe? Because make no mistake, it is always about soothing. It is always about survival. Think of it this way. Imagine a person who is starving, truly starving, for weeks on end. Their body is crying out for sustenance. Their mind is consumed by the thought of food. Now, place that person in a banquet hall. What will they do? Will they sit calmly and savor a single exquisite bite? Or will they move from table to table, grabbing whatever they can, stuffing it into their mouth, never tasting, never feeling full, driven by a hunger so deep it has become a panic? This is the internal reality of the person we are describing. The emotional starvation they experienced was not a one-time event. It was the very atmosphere of their childhood. It was the air they breathed. And so they enter adulthood with a hunger that is not a simple craving, but a bottomless pit. It is a wound that has never been allowed to heal. Now, what is the most immediate, the most accessible, the most culturally sanctioned way to feel a moment of connection, to feel, for one fleeting second, that you are seen, that you are wanted, that you exist. For many, it is through the body. Physical intimacy offers a powerful, if temporary, illusion of merging, of being held, of being accepted. It offers a flash of warmth in an otherwise cold internal landscape. But for the person with this deep wound, the act is not about the other person at all. It is about the self, or rather, it is about the desperate attempt to feel a self. The new partner is not a person with their own thoughts, their own feelings, their own needs. The new partner is a function. They are an audience. They are a mirror. And what the wounded person is looking for in that mirror is proof that they are desirable, that they are powerful, that they are worthy of attention. They are looking for the reflection they never received in their parents' eyes. This is why the conquest is so thrilling and why the aftermath is so empty. The thrill is the moment of capture, the moment the mirror is held up and shows a glowing, perfect image. But it is an image that cannot be sustained, because as soon as the act is over, as soon as the mirror is no longer actively reflecting, the old feeling returns. The emptiness is still there. The shame, the self-loathing, the profound sense of being fundamentally flawed and unlovable, it all rushes back in, and so the search must begin again. The hunger returns, demanding to be fed. It is a tragic cycle. And it is a cycle that is profoundly misunderstood. We see the person at the center of it and we call them heartless. But the truth is, they are so full of heart, so full of unprocessed pain, that they have had to build an armor around it just to survive. To let someone truly in, to allow themselves to be vulnerable and known, would risk triggering that original wound. It would risk being seen for who they really are, which, in their deepest belief, is someone unworthy and unlovable. It is far safer to keep people at a distance, to keep the encounters shallow, to be the one in control. The act of moving from one person to another is not an act of love or even of lust. It is an act of self-preservation. It is a compulsion, a way of managing a constant, low-grade emotional emergency. It is no different in its psychological mechanics from the compulsive behaviors we see in addiction. Whether it is a substance, a behavior, or a person, the pattern is the same. An overwhelming urge, a temporary relief, a crash of shame or emptiness, and a renewed craving. The object of the addiction is never the real need. The real need is for connection, for wholeness, for peace. But those things cannot be taken from another person. They can only be cultivated within. And here is the deepest sorrow of it all. The very behavior that is designed to protect the self, to fill the emptiness, only serves to deepen the wound. Each fleeting encounter reinforces the belief that connection is temporary, that people are objects to be used, that intimacy is a performance. It creates more and more distance between the person and their own true self, the self that was buried so long ago. The false self becomes stronger, more polished, more convincing. It learns exactly what to say, what to do, how to be the person that everyone wants. But the true self, the wounded child inside, remains alone in the dark, still waiting to be seen. We must have compassion for this, not for the behavior, but for the suffering that drives it. Because when we can see the suffering, we can begin to understand the possibility of healing. And the healing, when it comes, does not begin with controlling the behavior. It begins with turning inward. It begins with asking that terrified, lonely inner child, what do you need? What have you always needed? And how can I, the adult, begin to give it to you? The path out of this prison is not through finding a better mirror. It is through learning to see oneself. It is a long, slow, often painful process of unlearning. It is about recognizing the adaptations, understanding why they were necessary, and slowly, gently, beginning to reclaim the parts of the self that were left behind. It is about learning to tolerate the pain that was unbearable as a child, so that you no longer have to run from it as an adult. Can you imagine the courage that takes? To sit with the emptiness instead of filling it, to feel the loneliness instead of fleeing from it, to risk being seen, truly seen, by another human being, knowing that they might see the very flaws you have spent a lifetime trying to hide. That is the real work. That is the work of becoming whole. The person who sleeps with anybody is not free. They are a ghost, haunting their own life, searching for a warmth they cannot feel. They are a living monument to a loss that was never grieved. And perhaps if we can see them this way, we can also see the parts of ourselves that run, that hide, that grasp for comfort in places it cannot be found. Because we all carry wounds. We all have our adaptations. The shape of the armor may be different, but the soft, vulnerable self inside is the same. The capacity for true intimacy, for real love, is not something we are born with fully formed. It is a capacity that is grown in the fertile soil of a safe and loving connection. If that soil was barren, the seed lies dormant, but it is not dead. It is merely waiting, waiting for the conditions to be right, waiting for a different kind of warmth, waiting for someone, perhaps yourself, to offer the patient, consistent, compassionate presence that was missing long ago. That is where the journey begins, not with the next conquest, but with the first step inward toward the self you left behind.